Well, one show was just not enough. So Greg Silver and I are going to continue the party. There is a lot to discuss when we come to the Golden State Warriors. Let's keep it going. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Again, we're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's Jace, Jase Medical.com. You can follow Greg Silver on Threads at Greg Silver. That's it. It's that simple. The O has no H in it. It's just the letter O. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads at Dog Wild. We did not get a chance. Yes, Bruce Morrow, great to see you. This is Locked On Overtime right now. Hello, Raymond Solis and everyone else. And Andre FRBK. Yeah, I guess in this case, it is that bad when you're doing two shows. That's a fair assessment there. Stephen Curry was on the injury report real fast. Let's start with him real quick because I slid in there in the last show that I don't know if it's the worst thing in the world for the Warriors to play a game without Steph. And in all honesty, for a team this advanced in age, relatively speaking, by NBA standards, I don't think the expectation was to see all of these players play all 82 games. I mean, we were expecting days off here and there. There's a reason why this team has the depth it does. If Steph takes the night off, that might be a good thing in the grand scheme of things. Don't burn him out as given the postseason is still 6 months away from now. So if he goes to the bench, Chris Paul will almost undoubtedly start. Greg, how do you see that playing out, man? I envision the Brandon Podziemski minutes will be a lot easier to find. Corey Joseph has taken on the Andre Iguodala role of being a cheerleader on the bench. Nothing wrong with that. But what is your reaction to Steph possibly not playing tomorrow in a fairly important game against the Timberwolves?
Well, first of all, regarding the Podziemski thing, I'm very glad to see him get jumped in the rotation ahead of Corey Joseph from the get-go. Really, it was that first game against Phoenix when Corey Joseph kind of was ahead of him in that lineup and didn't play that many minutes. And it seems like Steve really likes Brandon Podziemski, which is a good sign. And I think he has a chance to do a lot more, especially if veterans miss time, namely number 30. So Chris Paul in the starting lineup would be interesting because he and Stephen Curry are two of the best point guards of this last generation, maybe the two best, depending on the discussion you're having. And they play such a different game. You're not replacing whatever output you're getting from Stephen Curry. I think that's fairly obvious, and not much more needs to be said there. If Chris Paul's running the offense, I'm very curious to see what else they do in terms of early substitutions. I'm not so much concerned with a starting unit with Chris Paul in place of Steph. It's more how many minutes do you let that run for at the beginning? Who's the first sub you're making? Chris Paul is playing with what other players when he comes back in, or is he staying out there? I mean, that's really what it is for me because of the number of new faces you're seeing on the roster and different lineup permutations you can throw out there. That's what I'm really looking at, is the players that can play well together. We can talk maybe in the show. I don't know if we'll get into that at any point, but with the Clay and Wiggins, and it's like, oh, would we want to see anybody else start? I actually don't want to see Jonathan Kuminga start alongside the normal starters in place of a Clay or a Wiggins, because I think he's so good out there with Chris Paul, a guy that can set him up nicely. And Kuminga's, he's had mostly positives. He wasn't great last night. He was 2 for 11, and he's got to be better at shooting free throws. I'm totally in agreement with Kylan on that one, but I like Kuminga with Chris Paul for the most part. So if Chris Paul plays, I'd like to see him get minutes with Kuminga because they seem to be very encouraging about the youngster getting to get more opportunities and flourish. So it's not so much about how Chris Paul is with the other four. It's really, what are we seeing with these first half lineup tinkerings?
Yeah, totally agree with you. And if Chris Paul, you mentioned this in part one of what's become a two-part night for us here, he's shooting just 16% from beyond the arc this year, which is god awful. But then again, who is shooting well, right? I mean, it's the bad shooting is across the board. If your name is not Stephen Curry and Chris Paul, his career shooting number is 37%. You brought up Jonathan Kuminga. I'm seeing some people, at least in the social sphere, levying a little criticism toward him. And I need to remind people of a couple of things when it comes to Kuminga. One, he's the same age as Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson were their rookie years. That's how young Kuminga was when he was drafted. I mean, he just turned 21 years old. So unless you were harping on Steph and Klay their rookie years, take it easy a little bit. The kid is incredibly young. If you thought he was going to be a 20-point per game scorer at this stage of his career, sorry, he's disappointing you. I mean, but the 3-point shooting is off. I think the 3-point shooting is off for everyone. I mean, Kuminga, I think, is shooting just 18% right now from beyond the arc, which is awful. But he is second on the team in free throw attempts by a long shot. Stephen Curry leads the team in free throw attempts, and then there's Kuminga, and then there's everyone else. So he's getting to the line. Like you said, his free throw shooting is not the greatest. What is he at? Like 65%, 70%? I don't have it in front of me right now, but if I had to guess, I'll just look it up right now real fast so I have the exact number.
I need 75 plus from Kuminga.
Which may last hold on. Right now, that's what he's shooting.
75 and a half.
Okay, so you're happy then. Okay, great. So Greg Silver is happy with Kuminga's free throw shooting.
All right, bump it to 80.
But again, he's getting to the line, right? I mean, again, he's second on the team in free throw attempts. He's third on the team in scoring. He's averaging 12.1 points per game. The only players higher than him are Steph, who is out of this world like usual. He's an MVP candidate. And then Klay Thompson, who is averaging 16 and change, well below his career mark, well below what we're accustomed to. And then there's Kuminga at number 3. So Kuminga's averaging 12.1 points per game, but he's 7th on the team in minutes. So, and this is where, again, I really wish we would see Kuminga and we would see Moody playing starter level minutes, because I'm curious to see what happens if we give him a full run. We've seen with Kuminga, especially, there was a 3-game stretch on the road trip where he was abysmal in the first half, right? But he salvaged those stat lines because Kerr, unlike last year, was giving him a longer leash, playing him in the second half, and he rewarded the coaching staff and the team for that by playing good minutes. I want to see some bigger minutes from these two. Here's another thing I'm really tired of seeing. I think it's good in certain moments, but the Warriors traded Jordan Poole essentially for Chris Paul, right? There were some other pieces involved in the trade, peanut butter and jelly being one of them. Who knows if that player is ever going to amount to anything, referring to Patrick Baldwin Jr. But they got Chris Paul. They got rid of Jordan Poole. People forget in the championship season, 2021-2022, that team started 18-2 on the season. It was a red hot start. I thought we were going to get something kind of similar to that this year before this 3-game slide. They had no Klay Thompson in that 18-2 start. What they did have was Jordan Poole before he regressed. We might end up saying that 2021-22 season will go down as the greatest season in Jordan Poole's career. That might end up being the case, which is kind of sad if that's ends up being a fact. But the point is, Stephen Curry with that starting 5 had a legitimate second scorer next to him, and they thrived. And I don't know if they're going to make a move for that. I don't know if they need to make a move for that. But what I don't want to see, what I don't like seeing, and I don't know what your thoughts are, is Steph and Chris Paul playing together. I don't like it. That's a backcourt where when you put those two together, it's an average age of 37. It's an average height of 6'1", and that's not going to result in championships. The appeal for me with Chris Paul was to lead a second unit and bring out the best off that bench. And that's fine and dandy, but we're seeing Chris Paul, he's third on the team in minutes, and we're seeing a lot of action out there with Chris Paul and Steph together, which creates a massive liability defensively. What are your thoughts on that? I hate it. What do you think?
It's certainly something I paid attention to because you got me keyed into it from the beginning of the season. I know on one of the early shows I said that I see value in having them out together at times. It doesn't need to be in extended spurts of minutes, but I see value in having them together at times. I do think lately it's been hard on the defensive end, especially with the way that they're not making up for it on offense. I think like you need the offense to hum and just work great, and at the very least get open shot after open shot if you're going to justify having those two out there. One point where I actually did like it was the end of that Sacramento Kings game on the road, the first one, when the Warriors had a big lead and they started squandering it, and it was getting a little bit scary at the end. And I remember thinking, Steph Curry's the best player. We want him shooting the free throws. That said, inbound the ball to Chris Paul. Let's play some big boy basketball and have two people that you can trust out there and be responsible. Chris Paul, almost the more reliable one, because he's just a little bit more of a steady force. In general, I don't love it. So I do agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I can understand the concerns for sure. I think it's not a bad situational pull from the coaching staff. It's not a bad situational play. I would not like to see them start a bunch of minutes alongside each other, and I'm glad they've gone away from that, because these playing games uphill as they did last night and as they did twice against Cleveland, it's tiring, like it takes a lot of energy away. And yeah, I mean, it's a long season. You don't want to wear these guys out.
Let me when we come back, here's the question I'm going to pose to you, and we'll save the answer for after we give some love to our sponsor. If this slide continues, let's say, you brought up, because one thing I'm very curious about is that no one's asking, maybe for good reason, because it's a sensitive question, and I'm certainly not getting answers, is what is the deadline for when we should start panicking if things don't turn around, right? Like how much time, how much slack do we give Clay? Do we give Wiggins? Do we give most of this team that's struggling this year before major adjustments are needed, right? And the team's one game above 500 right now, 11 games in. But my question to you, and I'm curious to know what your answer is when we come back, let's say for the sake of argument, we go to the new year, it's January 1st, and the Warriors are a 500 team. What we're seeing now just continues. Chris Paul seems like the logical piece to trade. Expiring deal. You have the fan base has no real emotional connection to him. If the team is 500 by January, his value is not that great, clearly, because he's been on the team for a few months and the results are average. Would you trade him? And because the team does have assets in terms of draft picks. I know that they don't have a first round pick next year, which they're really lucky about, in all honesty. Next year's draft is going to be one of the weakest we've ever seen, comparable to the 2020 draft where Wiseman was picked second. So it's not the end of the world that they don't have a first round pick next year. They do have first round picks beyond that. I think there's just one other year where they don't have a pick. They have second round picks. They have assets. They have that $30 million they owe to Chris Paul. When we come back, I want to hear from Greg Silver. Would you trade Chris Paul? And if yes, are there any names out there? Or do you think it's blasphemy that I'm even bringing this up right now? We'll touch on that and so much more after I give some love to FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Let me get their graphic real fast to make them super happy. Where are you, FanDuel? There you are. So, FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you bet on the 49ers yesterday, you cashed in. What a game that was, 34-3. Unfortunately, if you bet on the Warriors late yesterday, you probably would not be cashing in. But right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. What that means is if you place $5 on a game where you're not betting on the spread, meaning you're simply picking the winner of the game, regardless of how many points are scored, even if the odds are awful, make that bet. Put $5 down on a heavy favorite, and you will get $150 in bonus bets. This is good as cash, folks. They slide it right into your account. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, spreads, player props, OUs, futures, you name it, they got it. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. For the everydayers, we're back at this tomorrow. Post-game action. Warriors and Timberwolves play again. This time it's going to count as part of the in-season tournament. Stephen Curry currently listed as questionable. Kylan Mills and I will host the action right here. So join us live for post-game, where hopefully the Warriors will be 7-5 after tomorrow. You can follow Greg Silver on Threads at Greg Silver. The O is by itself. There's no H, unlike your Twitter account. That's Greg.
No, I changed that too. Now it's a 0.
Oh, okay. That's kind of that's so it looks the same, but it's not the same. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
Correct.
I got you. So and then you can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads at Dog Wild. Greg, if things are the same way they are now that they are in end of December, early January, is Chris Paul on the trade market? And are there any players or teams out there you're looking at? Your thoughts?
I'm inclined to say no. I also don't think that's going to be the case come January. I'm going to hold on to some good optimism. I think I was feeling really, really good through those first 9 games. And then the last 2 were just annoying and they didn't play well. But for the most part, I actually really liked what I saw, and I don't think they'll be there. Hypothetical trade questions are always tough because you don't know what other teams are going to be thinking and who other teams might be looking to ship. Like, is Zion Williamson going to want out of New Orleans? Maybe the Raptors decide to blow it up and you get long guys like OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam that were in potential trade talks going in for last year. So it's just a big it depends question, which I know isn't the greatest answer for a fun hypothetical on a podcast. But no, I think they're going to be better than 500. I think they're going to figure things out. And what Draymond said in the postgame yesterday, I actually loved, where he was like, we could talk about this and that and make all the excuses we want, dropped a couple F-bombs on live TV. God love him. And he's like, or we can play better. And it's funny that Warrior fans and 49er fans have a lot of overlap because, guys, the 49ers, we're winning the Super Bowl after 5-0 and beating Dallas. And then it was Brock Purdy sucks and it's all ruined and we need to make a trade. And then it's like you look at yesterday and it's like, oh, maybe they just got a little bit healthier and played better and they beat the you-know-what out of a team that had won 5 games in a row. So sometimes these things aren't that complicated. And I think that I like that he owned up to the fact that we need to get more organized when Steph is doing his thing. And that's an responsibility that largely falls on him and Chris Paul. I like that he just owned up to it and called out his trusted veteran teammate. Yeah. So.
No, great call. I'm with you. The one difference clearly being the Warriors don't have any injuries they're dealing with right now, whereas the Niners had serious injuries. But the struggles with the Warriors is perplexing, especially the Andrew Wiggins part of it. I would love to find out what the hell is going on with him, because a 28-year-old, I even was doing research today, like what other players in NBA history have had such a drop-off in terms of production without injuries being a cause? Couldn't find a single one. I couldn't find a single one that's comparable. Now, look, maybe they're out there. Maybe my research just wasn't narrow enough, or just, I missed something. But if anyone in the chat who's joining us for the live show is aware of another situation comparable to Andrew Wiggins at 28 years of age, a former All-Star, former number 1 pick, who's a physical specimen. I mean, his athleticism is a huge reason why the Warriors love him and where his contributions come from. If anyone has any idea what the hell is going on, chime in, please. I'm reading it because, yeah. And Ken Mamba writes, and I'm in agreement somewhat with this. Ken Mamba writes that the Warriors need to make adjustments now, right? Don't wait until 45 games. I'm totally with you. And then that's where one thing like, even though 11 games is not a massive sample size, it's not nothing either. Like, you can't just kind of scoff at 11 games. It's enough where you can kind of start getting a picture of what's going on. And I'm totally with you as well that the workload for Steph is out of control. In fact, let's hear from Stephen Curry. He was asked in the postgame yesterday what his feelings are about the fact that he's the only guy scoring. I mean, this is a stat that's been perpetuated all over the place now, that there hasn't been a single player not named Stephen Curry on the Warriors this season, 11 games in, who scored 21 or more points. Dario Saric is the only player who's cracked 20. He only did that once And that was way back at the beginning of the season. This is it's bizarre what's going on in terms of the lack of support. And this is where Klay Thompson's getting so much attention, because I think he was the player they were counting on for being that number 2 scorer. Technically is the number 2 scorer, but at 16 points and change, not quite what they were expecting. Here is Stephen Curry talking about other teams focusing on him particularly as their scoring machine.
Can you feel the extra focus or whatever, or the defense saying we're going to let the other guy shoot and just take away you?
I mean, there's always been an approach of guarding us for years. Like, where attention is going to be, and you're trying to blitz me in a pick and roll or stay body tight on Klay when he doesn't have it coming off pin downs, or whatever the case is. So we have to make adjustments. We can't just keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. But it's not a panic or anything. It's just a matter of getting a little smarter and a little bit more organized on how we're creating good shots, and trusting that we have the ability to do that with our rotations and the combinations that we put out there. So it does feel like everything's kind of tough to come by in terms of creating good looks, but that's not something that we feel like is unfixable.
There you go. So hopefully they do fix that. We'll have more in just a moment. Greg, I'm curious to know if you think this team offensively has enough. They are 11th in the NBA in points per game. To put it in perspective, last night they scored 110 points. That was right in the middle of the pack in terms of the 20. I think there were 22 teams that played basketball yesterday, and the Warriors were like 10th or 11th in terms of scoring. So it's not like they're struggling getting points up without Steph, but there was no second obvious score. And I'm curious to know if you think that's a big deal. And we got a few more subjects we're going to touch on in just a minute. I have to give some love to our other sponsor for this evening, and that's Jace Medical. They got one of these ad bars as well. Let me give them some love. There we go. So Jace is all about preparing your home with the medical kit you need so that you are prepared. And look, we spend a lot of time talking together, you and I, referring more so to the everydayers and everyone tuning into this program. We get fired up together on wins, maybe even more so on losses, who's starting, who's sitting, a lot of fruitful discussions we have in this program. And I'm thankful for being in this position, even with all the bad games the Warriors have and all the negative ramifications that come from that. It's still fun. And today I want our chat to be a little more personal. And this is a script I'm reading. I just learned that you can get a 1-year supply on ED medications. You realize what that means? Bring on extended travel. Bring on the next natural disaster or supply chain issue. You are covered, my friend. I'm looking at you, Greg. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your generics for Cialis, for Viagra, for Revatio prescriptions. You got that, Greg? And this is possible because of our friends at Jace Medical. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jace, quote, "I am thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut my pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year supply. I also ordered antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone," unquote. If you are someone you love would get some peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily medication, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's right for you. That's jacemedical.com. And remember to use the promo code Locked On for $20 off your purchase.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. I'm laughing because of comments like that. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. Yes, I'm immature at times. I apologize. You can follow Greg Silver on Threads at Greg O Silver. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads at Dog Wild. Are the Warriors fine, Greg, in your opinion? Can they win a title this year with their second best scorer being a 16-point per game Klay Thompson?
No. That doesn't mean that the answer is necessarily out of the building, but yeah, to help my boy Steph out in that press conference, dude needs some help right now. And here's the thing. So, okay, one thing I liked about the soundbite is it's cool to see a lot of the main pieces using the same words. We saw it before the season. Connectivity, commitment to one another, high IQ. Right now, we need to be more organized. I like that they're on the same page. I think the team is playing pretty hard for the most part. They're actually third in the league in offensive rebounds per game. So not bad for a team that you think of as undersized. On the offensive side, though, like I said in part one of the show, so here's the thing. If you're going to be an undersized team and you're shooting the ball terribly, that's a really bad recipe. And now all of a sudden 6-5 doesn't sound so bad because Steph Curry is shooting 44% from three. Draymond has had a complete resurgence and he's at 45. Here's some other numbers. We have a category of like, okay, which is Klay 34% for him, not great. Moody 34%, Saric 33%. GP2 36, not really a known shooter. And then we have three other important players that are terrible at shooting right now downtown. Kuminga 18%, Chris Paul 16, Wiggins 15. And this is all on the season through 11 games. And they've racked up 6 wins in large part because Stephen Curry is so great. So no, they're not going to win a title if it's like this all season because last year we had to burn our best player out, and it was a lot in the playoffs, and he actually had a really good series against the Lakers, but it wasn't enough. So but what I will say about this is, yes, the scoring needs to come from other places. I don't think it has to be the same person all the time. I think the way this team is constructed is it could be like a rotation of second and third scorers. If anyone watches the WNBA, the Las Vegas Aces, back-to-back champions, they have Asia Wilson, but then they also have Kelsey Plum, who could sometimes be their second best. They got Jackie Young, who can explode. They have Chelsea Gray. They had Candace Parker for like a few games, this year. But the point being, maybe sometimes it could be Kuminga. Maybe sometimes it could be Moses Moody. Maybe Klay catches fire at certain points. We know he's been rather inconsistent. Maybe Andrew Wiggins wakes up and is capable of getting 28 in a night, and another night he's good for 16. And I know I'm just throwing out numbers here, but the larger point is this is not sustainable. However, they can have a rotation of second scorers if everybody just ups it a little bit. And it does start with the defense to create good offense.
Good answer. I'm going to read you some minutes here, and I want you to tell me if you think the player is getting enough minutes, deserves more minutes, or should get less minutes. Stephen Curry is averaging 32.5. More or less than. Yeah. I'm gonna give each player. What do you think? Good? Are the minutes good? Should he play more? Should he play less?
Yeah, that's fine. That's about
Klay Thompson's averaging 31.3 minutes.
Right now, I could probably see that number drop a little bit. I'm not saying you gotta go into the teens or anything, but you could play him 5 less.
I'm totally with you. I think if you dropped it down to 25, it would not be the end of the world. You're giving other players more of an opportunity in the process. Chris Paul is averaging 27 minutes. And just to add to that, Mark Spears this offseason talked about how they were going to play Chris Paul in spurts of 5 minutes. That report did not come to fruition. We're not seeing that. But he's averaging 27. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's really Steph dependent. I would say they don't have to be together all the time. You could go less, but the purpose of Chris Paul is let's not have it be a disaster with the best player off the floor.
Totally. Andrew Wiggins is currently averaging 26 minutes a game.
I like it. He just has to play better.
I think you could cut that down by 10 minutes. Like Andrew Wiggins, to me, unless he turns this thing around, why is he playing more than 15 minutes a game? I don't, I guess this could be just a philosophical thing. I don't subscribe to the philosophy of, well, he did this for us in the past. So like the past should not matter. It's all about what you're doing now, right? Like that's where nostalgia, I think, it influences these decisions sometimes. Like the way Wiggins is playing right now, I don't see justification for giving him more than 15 minutes a game. But you're saying you're fine with the 26?
I mean, if he goes back into Andrew Wiggins form, and I'm willing to let him have that for a little bit longer. Like, yeah, if this is 10 games from now, then of course less. But I'm not there yet with Wiggins.
Draymond 24.8.
Ooh, that's actually less than I thought it would.
Same.
I think I could see him play more. I don't mind it. It's just
Yeah,
he doesn't get in foul trouble or technical foul trouble.
I'm with you. Kevon Looney is averaging 23.2. That's a little higher than than what we're accustomed to with Loon.
I never have a problem with Loon being out there, but I'd say 23 is about right for just your average.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that going down to 18 and using those minutes more with GP2 or Sharich, but that's me. Kuminga, excuse me. Kuminga's averaging 20.5 minutes.
That's more than I was expecting to hear. With a fully healthy team, he could get a couple more. With a not fully healthy team, he could definitely get 5 to 10 more.
Yeah, for me, anything below 25, and you're robbing this kid of what not only his development, but what we can get out of him. I wish he was averaging 25. Dario Saric is averaging 20 minutes per game on the dot. He's having a great year, by the way, all things considered. Your thoughts on whether or not 20 is enough for him, or maybe not enough?
If he's getting eaten up on defense, less for sure, but I do want to give him his flowers on how he's played. I think that was a really nice free agency addition.
Totally agree. I don't know where they'd be without him, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird. Like, he's been an underrated contributor for the squad. This one, I think, is grossly lower than it should be. Gary Payton II is averaging 18.3 minutes per game.
Yeah, more.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying this since 2021. I want 25 plus minutes a game from this kid. And when you look at like nearly all of the net ratings for the best lineups of the Warriors, he's in almost all of them. Like, the dude is a winner. I hope we see more of him as well. I'm hoping his minutes have been reduced the last 2 games because of whatever the illness was that affected him and caused him to miss the Nuggets game. But and then last one, Moses Moody is currently averaging 17.1 minutes per game.
Well, I know I told you this before the show. This isn't me saying Moses Moody is our 5th best player, but I would like to see him start. I think that would be my first choice of guy to plug into the starting rotation.
I don't understand. I really was clamoring for this last year, and this is a critique of Kerr. And I don't know why he doesn't do this more, but he doesn't integrate veterans and youngsters together. Like, I thought I was expecting to see that last year. What I mean by that is, like, why not have a lineup where, let's say, you have Steph, Clay, and Draymond, but then you throw in Kuminga and Moody with them, right? And then you're kind of spreading out the veterans with the youngsters, and that way you're not having a lineup of just entire youngsters. Like, that was a huge problem last year because they were relying on Jordan Poole as your 6th man to lead this second unit of youngsters, and Jordan Poole clearly was not the right man for that job. Chris Paul clearly is. But yeah, I wish we saw more of that integration between veterans and youngsters, but that's me.
And I think we could. I really do think we could moving forward with just, they're going to see a lot of repeat opponents, so they're going to have some matchup intel. I can't say exactly what's going to happen. But yeah, I know you were going to say any final thoughts. I guess this is what I would end part 2 with, because I know we got to go quick, which is that coaching in the NBA is a really fragile job. I think at the end of last year, it was like only 4 coaches had the same job since 2019. It was Spoelstra, Malone, Kerr, and Popovich. And a lot of the reason with that is you're managing guys that are in a very select group of being good at what they do. So that's a lot of ego management too. Like, that's a lot of ego management. And I think Steve Kerr has a great capacity for emotional intelligence and managing his players. So none of us can really say what the best strategy to handle this Klay Thompson and this Andrew Wiggins kind of situation is. I think they're doing it right with Kuminga this year. They're being very encouraging toward him, but that's just kind of something to keep in mind as we move forward.
Absolutely, man. I want to let people know, by the way, before we go, I'm going to start mentioning this a few times at the end of the show, but if you want to be involved in this program in the Rick Barry Show, I'm bringing on a few interns. Kylan's bringing on a couple interns herself. You have to register for college credits. It is a community college I'm a professor at in San Luis Obispo. It's called Cuesta College, just north of where you went to school, Greg, in Santa Barbara. And if you want to learn about sports journalism, if you want to learn how to write effectively with AP style and all that, register for Journalism 202. Do that immediately. If you're interested, Greg, thank you, brother. Thank you to everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.